Kamala Harris just did the unthinkable. She started talking to the press. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott. This is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, couple of interviews is about the best way I can sum that up. I think Harris is trying to sabotage her own presidential campaign. She went on The View. I think this was on, I think this aired Tuesday morning. And she was asked, is there something you would have done differently than President Biden in these last 4 years? And she said, there is not a thing that comes to mind. This from the woman who's been running as the change candidate for the last 4 or 5 weeks. But the real killer was on 60 Minutes. She sat down and did a bunch of interviews, walking around and stuff with Bill Whitaker from CBS News, 60 Minutes. And one of her answers, this is just classic Kamala Harris word salad, so I have to share it with you. Asked about making peace in Ukraine, she said, there will be no success in ending that war without Ukraine and the UN Charter participating in what that success looks like.
What?
I don't know. But, I have a question for Kamala Harris. If I were Bill Whitaker or anybody else in the press, I just want to ask her, do you know what a sentence does? Anyway, I got to share this with you. The real killer, I think, was she was asked. Bill Whitaker asked her about the current regional war essentially going on in the Middle East, and he said to her that it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening to President Biden or to Vice President Harris. And Harris said, and this is an exact quote, I could run the clip, but every time I hear her voice, a piece inside me dies, and there aren't that many pieces left. So I'm just gonna read that to you. She said, well, Bill, long pause, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements, pause, in that region by Israel that were very much, pause, prompted by, pause, or a result of many things, including our advocacy of what needs to happen in the region. And
it's genius, really. When you get right down to it, that's actual
Bill,
genius.
Let me send that one to you. What if you were actually sitting down for an interview with Kamala Harris and you weren't a member of the mainstream media trying to pull her across the finish line? What would your response be to a non-answer like that?
Well, you've asked me a question, and questions are an important part of life because without questions, we can't find the answer to the things that we're asking about. I've been answering questions for a long time as a pundit here at BillWhittle.com, and I think the most important thing about questions is if we didn't know the answers in the first place, we wouldn't even ask the question. And so, to answer your question, I think we really need to understand that the answer is not knowable until the question is asked. And the answers to the questions that I've given in the past, I think, are a pretty good indication of the fact that the answer to your question is something that is possible to answer.
Bill, let me give you a quick follow-up on that. Do you even know what a sentence does?
I've used sentences many times in the past as a middle-class child growing up here in America, just me and single mom, working hard. As you probably know, I went on to become a famous internet pundit, and so sentences are things that they're things that are they're a key part of language, and language would be impossible without sentences.
I think it has something to do with the concept of time. Time.
Just consider that. Yeah.
I just wanted to give you a new answer, unburdened by the answers that I'd given before.
Well, and I am certainly unburdened of having an answer or a sentence, so I thank you for that.
Steve, I saw a video of a little girl, and her father came up to her and said something like, did you do your homework? And she looked up at her father and she said, I grew up in a middle-class family.
Everything Kamala Harris says is double-spaced.
So you got to fill the sheet and you double space.
Yeah.
Fill the time. Yep.
Yeah. Let me get back to this CBS 60 Minutes interview. Bill Whitaker asked her there's actually a pretty serious question. He said, "I'll tell you what the critics and columnists say. The reason so many voters don't know you is that you have changed your positions on so many things." And he actually goes and listed them in some detail on fracking, southern border, Medicare for all, a whole list of things. And Harris, again, I'm just going to quote her verbatim here, answered this sort of charge of backtracking on all these issues, flip-flopping, triple Lindy flip-flopping on all these issues. She said, "In the last 4 years, I have been vice president, and I have been traveling our country, and I have been listening to folks and seeking what is possible in terms of common ground. I believe in building consensus. We are a diverse people, geographically, regionally, in terms of where we are in our backgrounds, and what the American people do want is that we have leaders who can build consensus, where we can figure out compromise and understand it's not a bad thing as long as you don't compromise your values to find common sense solution." And that has been my approach. Scott?
I feel like I wanted to dub her obfusc Kamala. It just
I love it.
It just seems like she has a gift. In some ways, she reminds me of Chauncey Gardner.
Yep.
With these, but at least Chauncey Gardner was saying simple things about gardens, and then people were extrapolating those to have meaning. But I don't think anybody can extrapolate what Kamala Harris is saying here. There are times when she reminds me of Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey, except after Deep Thoughts with Jack Handey, even though it was weird, you felt good. I never have that feeling. There was a birthday card, I wish I still had it, that I gave my grandfather years ago, and it was one of those birthday cards that's making fun of the fact that you're getting older, And you start reading the text of the birthday card, and it's like a normal birthday card. And then somewhere in the middle of this paragraph, they just start moving words around so that they're still in sentences, but they don't mean anything. And so, yeah, it's hilarious if you're giving it to somebody, in the age of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. Not as funny today as it was back then. But back then, and that's the feeling I get. I think that the true answer when they asked her, for example, as you mentioned earlier, what would you do differently than what Joe Biden did? I think her answer should have been, well, I want to be precise in answering your question. Can you tell me what Joe Biden did? I would like to, tell you whether or not I would do it differently. So she's really tough to listen to, and it's an act of hope upon on the part of the people who are supporting her that somehow this hot mess of jumbled thinking will be able to get through a 4-year term as a chief executive in our constitutional government. And really what's holding the glue that holds her campaign together is the fear of Donald Trump and the hope of freedom to exterminate more babies. And so without those two elements, I don't think you have a Kamala Harris campaign. With those two elements, people are willing to overlook everything.
Yeah, I believe you're right about that. Although you can't bring up Jack Handey in Deep Thoughts without me thinking of my favorite one of those ever, where Jack Handey said, "I don't believe that sudden and uncontrolled urination should necessarily eliminate someone from a weightlifting competition."
See, I feel better after hearing that. I never feel that way with Kamala Harris.
No, not once. Folks, if you think you hate the mainstream media enough, you really don't. 60 Minutes ran that word salad answer on the Israel situation in a preview clip that was on YouTube and X, formerly known as Twitter. And then that's not what they aired. They eliminated the whole word salad answer and plugged in something else from a previous part of the discussion on the Middle East. So this is completely deceptive editing, where she said, "We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end," which is I mean, that's almost an answer. So, good on her for producing almost an answer at one point. But
it contains no data.
Exactly. But CBS News cut out the preview because it made her look bad and stuck in the wrong answer to that question. And you can find this at Instapundit. There's a post there right now with the whole thing. You find it on Twitter. You can find it on YouTube. It's just embarrassing on the part of CBS News if the mainstream media were capable of embarrassment in their job of promoting Democrats, and they are not. And that is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.